Welcome to Owen and Baru's Barbecue. Tonight we're cooking up something real fresh. We've got some jumbo fried krill, right? Space krill, specifically, as well as a heaping dose of split pea Night Sisters soup. Joining me, as always, are my co-hosts in crime here, and the chef de casa. My name's Matt. I'm joined with Nick and Chris, and I'm
glad to be here in this chef de casa.
I think it's just because I recently watched the Barbie movie, so it's in my brain. Okay. Anyway, we're here to talk about Ahsoka episodes 5 and 6. It's going by so quick, and we only have so much time to cram in these 2 episodes, which I felt were full of mythology and theories and ideas. So we've kind of talked, but we kind of have not talked about these episodes at all. So
I don't think I've talked really at all.
No, none of us have.
No,
really.
Not really. Other than Nick's texts, which and whenever I see you guys text anything, I just delete the whole thread. I'm not reading this. Like, I'm not gonna get spoiled on this bullshit.
So the question is, did you become the cool dad in the last couple of weeks? Or you letting your kids watch it on Tuesday nights?
You know what? I asked my daughter, and she said that I was already a cool dad, and that I don't need your approval for this.
Oh my God.
She
from her.
honestly, she would be the most like up late if we watched it. She would be the one that would be up, like theorizing, thinking, like not able to fall asleep. So she's fine with it. We watch it on Wednesdays when they get home from school, so it's kind of a treat that way. So no, I'm not a cool dad in Chris's eyes. But
well, no. To be fair, this is actually a continuation of a recommendation from our guest last episode, Ralph.
Yes, I was.
Of which we all jumped on the bandwagon to give you stuff for.
Yes. Well, and but you know, I did have a parent-to-parent conference on this, and Colleen, who helps produce this show, by putting the sizzle on the show here.
It's true.
And a listener to the show, as I've found out, she had the mistake of, or at least Jay did, of allowing the boys to stay up and watch, and then they wouldn't go to sleep. So I felt very vindicated from hearing her. Now I realize I have teenagers; they're a lot older than her kids, but
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Let me just live my life, okay? We're here to talk about Ahsoka, not my kids' sleep habits. These were 2 epic episodes. I mean, I know how at least 2 of us felt about episode 5. I'm not sure how you guys felt about episode 6. Chris, why don't you start off with how you felt about episode 5?
Episode 5 for me was one of those episodes where I think anybody who's following the show, and if you have any type of social media page, you're going to be inundated with people's reactions to episode 5. And that's the big elf in the room. I think that it was the callback episode, the flashback episode, if you will, that the Clone Wars and Rebels fans alike were really yearning for. And I thought they did a really good job with using the format of the show just to jump back into that world, into that time, and capture the feeling of Clone Wars without, in my opinion, without going over the board, cheesy, off the wall, like making it a separate show type of situation. I thought they did a really nice job with how they kind of blended it into the storyline, first of all. The casting was incredible, I think, for young Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really nice job. That was the same girl from, I think she was young Gamora from Guardians.
She was also in Barbie.
Yeah, I don't know her name, but That was snips, dude. Like that was my big beef with episodes 1 and 2 is like I wanted more snips. We got snips. Like I think they did a really nice job with that character and the casting for young Ahsoka.
Now I think Nick would like to counter that.
No,
that's fair.
No, it's fine. I don't knock the actress one bit. She was fine. You know, it actually put it in a weird kind of context to see an actual child playing young Ahsoka because she was a child at the time.
Yeah.
She was like 12 or 13. I guess just in my mind, I really wanted to see Ashley Eckstein play that if they were going to play her young, because she is small enough to play that role, even though she's in her 40s or maybe late 30s. You know, with the amount of makeup they could put on her, they could probably make her look young. But it is what it is. I mean, like I said, I don't fault it. That's just me as a Rebels and Clone Wars fan wanting to see Ashley get some kind of part in the show.
I think this and I understand what Nick's saying, and I think we've as hardcore Star Wars fans through this show, there's been bumps along the way where we've like Hera right out of the gate. I was just like, I'm having a hard time. Yeah. In this episode 5, I get to see Hera be a parent, and that was the Hera that I like. I was like, oh, this is great. That moment where Jason's sensing something and wants to talk to mom, and there's always been that point as a parent where your kid's talking to you and another person's like trying to interrupt, and you're like, hold on a second, let me just talk to my kid for a second here. It's just like I gotta hear them out. So those bumps along the way of like how we connect with these characters, you could almost say that, because one of the criticisms about that episode is that it was fan service, that these flashbacks were just fan service. But if they were just fan service, then maybe they would have used Ashley, or they would have been more, I felt like it created a template for showing Ahsoka's backstory for those that haven't seen any of those things. It's kind of like, oh, this is the trauma that she's dealing with here.
Right.
And we see her on the other side of the trauma at the end of the episode where she is lighter. She's now kind of like dealt with some of those.
Gandalf the gray or Gandalf the white. That's
right.
Kind of the comparison,
Yeah, and aptly put, So I guess I felt like it served the purpose of showing at least what this child had been through, and we got live action clones,
dude. So
for the first time,
yeah.
And we got what's his name's voice for Rex too, and I thought was really really cool. Yeah. I thought they did a nice job with that. I think that there's one thing where neither of us have mentioned yet, but Hayden Christensen, holy shit, that dude, like he was awesome. Like,
oh my god,
absolutely knocked it out of the park. You know what I mean? And that's tough because he was that was the Anakin, like his portrayal of Anakin from like the prequels, right?
Yeah, and
then a whole new life was injected into that character with Clone Wars, right? So there's a whole new like all these different layers of his attitude and who he was, less of kind of a whiny little, whatever, and turned into like who he was in his post-adolescence and like in his late teens, early 20s as he's becoming a Jedi Master and being, the teacher for, Ahsoka's teacher. So like, I think that like he nailed it. Like he absolutely nailed it. And I wasn't sure like that the episode prior when we got that release of his, we got to see him, right? I was like, was that AI? Was that him?
Right.
Was it real?
Yeah.
And sure as hell it was, right? So like I just think that you saw, and not only did you see him as Clone Wars Anakin, you saw him as Clone Wars Anakin progressing in one episode. Like you had like 3 different stages of Anakin, Clone Wars Anakin, as portrayed by Hayden Christensen, who never had the opportunity to do that.
But don't you think that he's watched Clone Wars, the cartoon? Don't you think he's at least? You don't think he's seen?
I bet he's seen some of it, but not all of it.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
He hasn't watched them all.
Yeah.
He probably had to for this, right? So he probably had to do some, study.
He has the. To me, that was that Clone Wars era Anakin that we saw from the cartoon, and he brought it to life, which I just was like, great. And in this one episode, I get those vibes. So, probably the best Hayden Christensen that we've had in
Dude,
the entire.
Unbelievable. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I'd be shocked if he doesn't have some type of job after this. I mean, at least he should. Like,
I think
good.
we'll still see him again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like
Now you will. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Well, I think there was, as Hayden Christensen as an actor, I think like a lot of Star Wars actors who got negative pushback, like they kind of don't want anything to do with the role for many years. And I think him, same as with the actor who plays Jar Jar, probably the young actress who plays Rose, there's a lot of people that were like, okay, I don't want anything to do with that anymore.
Right.
And I think doing the Obi-Wan series took a load off of him. And because like when I saw him down in Denver, he was nothing but smiles and happy, and you see that clip of him at Celebration where the crowd is really pumped to see him.
We know how to make a guy feel good about himself or something.
Right? Yeah, and he's like, I'm getting misty eyed, because I think it was like it was such a weight lifted off of him to see the fans actually embrace him for the first time. And
because I mean, he got dumped on like that. I mean, his character got dumped on, but there was never any there was no outlet for anybody to justify his role. Like all you had was just the fanboys getting angry. And
I mean, it's justified, especially in episode 2, because he's playing just a whiny teenager, and that
he's
the
a
role.
petulant little brat. I mean, he's no better than Joffrey from Game of Thrones. Anyways, I think what we loved about cartoon Clone Wars Anakin is that it gave us the friendship with Obi-Wan, and that we got to see that develop. You got to see him as a mentor and as a teacher, and having those moments where he is kind of like engaging as he does in these flashbacks with Ahsoka, even as he's trying to give her a lesson. Now, and fan service or not, those flashes when it goes to Vader, or when they modulated his
sick
voice,
editing, dude. That was awesome.
When they modulated his voice and he comes back and he's that was just, I love that stuff.
And like the slight, you can see the yellow in Ahsoka's eyes for a half second.
Yeah. And
but I also think there's a really cool what's that?
Chris,
just because we're going everywhere.
Nick's like, I want to go back to this one point.
Sorry.
No, it's just, no, it's fine. Like it's just one of those things where it's like, because that's just the way we are when we talk. He's like, we're skipping to here to back to here, and it's like
that's what we do. It's like ADD Star Wars.
I know, no, and that's one of those things too. I originally thought the same thing as well. Is like, was that because you hear the line that he says, this like, everything I am, you are. You are part of a legacy, and so it's one of those things. When I saw the saber, come up to her face, and you see her eyes be yellow for a second, you're like, okay. I originally thought that I was like, is she really yellow right now, or is it just the reflection from the saber? I don't know.
Right.
I kind of do want to think it was a moment of her being full of rage, because it was like he said at the very beginning of the episode, I'm here to finish her training. I'm here to basically put her through the trials that she never had.
Right.
And that's how I saw everything within the World Between Worlds, was that was her trial to become a Jedi. And
I like that.
Yeah. And that moment in particular, she has that rage. She has this feeling of what
we saw it in the episode prior where she throws Shin, right? She throws her. That was out of rage. And
so, and you also with Morgan, when he said, how did you learn this information? He goes, let's just say I didn't follow Jedi protocol. So she clearly tortured her. Or something. So
one of the cool things I was watching and observing, and I didn't think of this, and I mean, I didn't come up with this. I saw someone speaking about this. I thought it was really cool.
Was it a TikTok?
It was a TikTok, actually. So there was someone discussing the idea about how you could go do a flashback to, was it episode 3? I think it was, when Anakin's being seduced by Palpatine, and Palpatine says, I can teach you the secrets of how to prevent or protect your loved ones and prevent their death.
Oh, that kind of seduction. Okay.
Right. Which was kind of like fulfilled in this episode.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because he helped prevent the death of someone he cared about in Ahsoka.
Well, that was my thought. That's why I sent you guys that one text. It's just a thought, because we know that Ahsoka died in the Clone Wars, and the spirit of the daughter went into Ahsoka, which is why the owl is always there to help her when she needs help.
Mhm.
And you see in that same episode before that, when she dies, you see the father actually say, "The chosen one is meant to take my place, and if you don't, then the real world will suffer because you have to keep my daughter and my son in check." And so that was one of those things. There's like, through Anakin's death, he finally got the power that Sidious promised him. In a way, I mean,
that would
go ahead.
Yeah, no, that'd be an interesting thing. That mythology, and I'm really impressed with Ahsoka, with how it's laid out a lot of mythology, and it's creating a mythology by answering things. I love it.
Yeah.
So how they introduce the Father, the Son, and that to just the casual viewer too. It's just like, it does. I know you had mentioned, Nick, like, is the son Ezra? Maybe the son hasn't revealed himself yet.
I think the son's going to be on the planet, the new planet.
That would make sense
because go ahead.
And I mean, we haven't gotten to episode 6 yet, but there is specifically a power that he is after there.
Right.
What's
Baylan.
his name? Baylan. Thank you.
Because you hear him say that. I mean, he nails every scene he's in. Yeah, absolutely. But you hear him say that to Shin, is that, can you feel it? Can you? There's something stirring here, and it immediately made me think of the Bogan, or whatever it was. The Bendu, and then the Bendu says, "I am in the middle," and so if he's in the middle, there's clearly one on both sides of him, and we have not been introduced to those two. So it wouldn't surprise me, in your wasteland planet that's full of death, that's where the dark side is.
Or something that, because he talks about the mythology, and the childhood, legends and stories, and that he kind of alluded to, like, this place is a place that he could change what went wrong.
Well, that's interesting, because, like I said, I have 3 pages of notes of just, like Matt was saying, these 2 episodes. Matt didn't ask my opinion, what I thought of them.
I hadn't gotten around to it because we just
I mean, these 2 episodes to me were the 2 kinds of episodes that I love and I also kind of hate, in a way, because being such a plot person, I didn't like that. The story didn't progress much. I mean, these 2 episodes were world building episodes, and that's fine.
I think it's even more than world building. It's actually like it's the next, like, 15 years of Star Wars content is what is being built from these 2 episodes, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff.
Incredible. Like, once we get to the next episode, there's so much potential of, like, whoa, where is this going?
Right. And I think that with Baylan, as we've said, he's not a Sith, he's a dark Jedi. And I think that's what he is yearning to do, is just like how Palpatine did in Rebels. He is also wanting to access this world between worlds, to go back to the very beginning and stop the duality of the 2.
This is what we're jumping all the way to episode 6 and just kind of skipping some other things that we can get to, but I do think that makes a lot of sense plot wise, because they've introduced world between worlds, and I try to look at the show as though, like, there are some people that haven't seen this other stuff, right? And you kind of introduce the world between worlds with that Anakin, like, all of a sudden, boom, he's here. How did she get there? What is this? Right. But to pay it off with Baylan being the one to open that up, or say, this is the gateway that I've been looking for, because with this, I can change all of the things that went wrong. Because he's clearly got some issues with how things didn't go.
My thought on all that is that it's going to go back to that same scene when Ahsoka had to stop Ezra from saving Kanan.
Right.
And in the fact that it's one thing for him to pull her through in one moment, but if Baylan really changes something far, 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 far back,
right,
whether the implementation, whatever. What's going to happen is
implications.
For a ripple effect for that, to the point where she says that, like, if you stop Kanan now, you all die. Because so I think that's going to be the same thing. And so we're going to get probably not in this season, but the end game for this season, maybe in the Filoni movie, we're going to see that, where we're going to see Knights of the Old Republic. We're going to see someone from the future. We're going to see a lot of characters come in to face off, to stop, or something's going to happen to stop this from happening.
Yeah. Some fans have theories too about, this larger threat that's even beyond Thrawn and the Night Sisters and the what are they called? That they attack. The vein. What is it? I'm sorry. I'm missing their name because I never read that trilogy.
The Night Troopers.
No, that's like there's this outside threat that comes into the galaxy, and they have to like band together. The Vong something,
something like that. Right.
Yeah. I never read that, but I think that's when Chewbacca dies. He dies in that saga. So
to save Han's son.
Yeah. So who knows? Whatever they are going to do, though, they have to set it up. And right now, even if these episodes didn't move much along, it did open up this whole universe and explain to a lot of people, like in a much better way than Boba Fett being in a bathtub.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just saying, like the Anakin flashback, like the fans that can be upset about that, it's just like, come on, like we're getting information here about Ahsoka.
My issue with episode 5 was nothing that we saw; it's what we didn't see. Because I wanted it to be almost more like a Christmas Carol in a way, or Scrooge, and that I wanted more explanation. I actually just wanted it to be all about Anakin and Ahsoka. Really, you could have moved all the Jason and Hera stuff to another episode. I felt, but it is what it is. But like I wanted it to be.
I love the Jason stuff.
But no, it was good. I'm not saying I'm not saying I didn't like it. I'm just saying that, like, every time I was pulled away from Anakin and Ahsoka, you're like, hurry up and get back, But it's one of those things where I would have, because that Ahsoka, from just little things she said, she's been a soldier her whole life. She questions in that episode in the flashback, like, all I've known as a soldier, I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to do these things anymore. This isn't what I was trained for. And you see these things. You see it from Qui-Gon saying, I can only protect you. I can't fight a war from you. You hear it from Mace Windu. You hear it from all these people saying we're people of the peace, not soldiers. And she's right to question this train of thought of what Anakin is taking her down. And I would have much rather preferred, but she feels this guilt of, like, what if I would have stayed? What if Anakin would have turned? What would have happened, if I didn't give up? And I think she has bore this burden for so long, and that's really what this episode is about, is letting episode 5 is letting that go. But I would have liked to have seen, I like the fights, I like what they did with it, but I would have also liked to have seen consequences. Like, what if she would have stayed? What would have had? And I would have liked to
that's a show we need Disney to make, is the Star Wars What If.
I would have liked to have seen the consequences. It's like, the will of the Force is what I'm saying. It's like the will of the Force is for Anakin to go the route that he did, and it relieves her burden, because I would have liked to have seen every outcome be worse than what we got. Yeah. And so by the time that she makes that decision, she is then Ahsoka the White, to be like, I am completely now my own person and I'm whole. I think it would have been more rewarding to get that. That's just me. But.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I think it would have been awesome. But I also think that, I think the way they did it, I thought was awesome too. Like, I don't know. I really liked that episode. I mean, that was the first time I sat there and I was like, at the end of the episode, I was like, oh my God, that was so good.
Yeah.
We had like the episode prior when we got to go to the World Between Worlds for the first time. It was cool. You got like a second of it. You're like, oh, cool. But after this one, I was like, oh my God, that was just like such like a, I don't know, like I had like a weird connection to it, right? Because it was just something that we've always wanted to kind of see,
Yeah.
But like, and I think that episode probably did not land nearly as much for those who did watch or didn't watch Clone Wars versus those who did.
And there's a lot of stuff in there that even people who did watch those won't catch. It's like the first battle they're at is the Siege of Ryloth.
Siege of
Ryloth.
Was it Ryloth?
Yeah, the 3-episode arc in that. And so you can see the Twi'leks in the background.
Yeah, and she ends up getting some clone troopers killed, and so that's the grief that she's feeling. Like she gets some clone troopers killed in those episodes. So that is the grief that she's feeling and that guilt that she's feeling. And to see her touch that hand and like have this connection, like she's realizing for the first time, and she's reliving it, as adult Ahsoka. She's reliving it as a child and saying like, this is this trauma. I liked the in between parts. Again, I liked the part with Jason, hearing the lightsabers, the crossover with the water, seeing him with Chopper. I mean, how cool would it be if you had Chopper as your like dog, basically? I mean, and when Hera leaves Jason, to go fly and search for Ahsoka, it's like Chopper's there. Chopper will murder anybody.
So is what's his name?
Hu Yang.
Hu Yang.
Yeah, Hu Yang. Yeah. And I love that line too, where Hu Yang, is like explaining we get Kanan's name for the first time, and he's talking to the X-Wing pilot, and he's just like, okay, like what? Like he's just kind of like, I like that we get that everyday like person that's just kind of like, all right, like what, like
sure, why not?
Yeah, like it's just like he's seen just about everything, like
yeah. I also might have read into this a little bit too much, but the very opening scene of episode 6, when they're just sitting there in the ship in the Belly of the Whale, and she, he's like, I remember the story. She's like, oh yes, the history of the galaxy 1, 2, and 3. And of course,
the first one was better,
the best. Yeah, and I was like, that's a little bit of the original trilogy is the best trilogy.
Oh,
and I do love how the story he ended up telling the story started off in a galaxy far, far away.
Oh,
that was
come
a cute
on,
touch.
That was so. I don't know if you didn't get Star Wars fan chills from that, like, you have no pulse.
Cool. There's a lot of stuff that's chills. Like even at the end of episode 5, when she was, and I'll find him, I promise. Like that got me. I was like, oh, and then what is, I've got like tons and tons of, like, I don't know if you guys noticed that either. Like the last fight. Oh, so to go back to what we were talking about earlier with the him in the War Between Worlds flipping between Vader and Anakin all the time. That's kind of like what I thought a lot of that was, is that because when you're in the War Between Worlds, time doesn't exist. It's all one thing. And so you see a lot of echoes in the lines of like, then you will die, which is, he says that, because he said that to her in Rebels. He said, and
she says, I will not fight you.
I will not fight you. Yeah. And she doesn't say, I won't fight you, but like, but she says, I won't go. I won't leave. Not ever again. And it's kind of the same thing. There's a lot of, mirroring, there's always mirroring in Star Wars.
But I mean, it wasn't too heavy-handed, and I liked the fact that we were seeing the duality of Anakin play out. We see the light side and the dark side being balanced on an edge almost, and he's with that moment where he's having her, he's basically, if you say like he's putting her through the trials, he's having her face her biggest fear, which is Vader.
Yeah.
Right. And she overcomes that, disarms him.
Right.
And throws the weapon down.
And that's kind of what
she's done that twice now.
Well, she didn't win the first fight,
but she went through it twice.
She went through it twice.
It's essentially a second trial.
Well, that's why I think was her trials, like to become a Jedi, is because you see him going back and forth between, because like he says, everything I am, you are. So that weakness that's in him, that rage is in her, just like it is in him. And then when she beats him, or actually, because you see him, so actually that last fight, if you guys noticed it, it's beat for beat the same fight he has with Obi-Wan on Mustafar.
Is it?
His back is to her. He comes around, like he grabs her arm and tries to like do everything he did to Obi-Wan. And I mean, I can't confirm that, but I know it's a lot of it's very similar. And then, like I'm saying, and then she didn't fully go and kill him. She could have. And then I think in that moment, the good comes in it, and you can view that two different ways. Like, did she save him in that moment, or did she just simply pass the trial?
She passed the trial, and she chose life. It was a life or death thing. If she had chosen to kill him, I think that she would have died.
Right.
You know, like that was her. I like that we don't see how she entered into the world between worlds or got out of it, but how it occurred or how we saw it, like with the stars dissolving into water and the water comes up from her.
That was sick.
Yeah. And then we see the ghost, the effects of the ghost on the water was just so sweet. It was just such a great visual image of that ship. Getting into episode 6, you know, and I know we've talked about it, but we haven't talked about the Grand Admiral throne, the entrance beyond entrances.
That was crazy, dude.
I mean,
can I ask a real dumb question here?
Sure.
Yeah.
Are we introducing freaking zombie troopers? Like,
yep,
those are Night Sister reincarnated clones. So what is it?
Not all of them, but I think some of them are. So I have so many notes about this.
I think
this episode, Filoni really dive deep into mythology and history in this, and little details that are in the soldiers and things that are happening. Like you see all the gold, melding of the armor and all that stuff. That's very Japanese. Yeah. You see the death masks or the Roman cavalry masks.
Yep.
You see so many things that happen. I mean, even the fact that his name is Enoch from the book of Genesis.
Right. Yes.
You know, like it's like there's so many things that are in it that are implying that.
The red gauze that's round around them, which is the same as with the Night Sisters.
Right. Yeah. And then the fact that she said, Morgan I saw the catacombs, and you see them moving boxes. So you assume that there's going to be an army of the dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's
Night Sisters hit a lot harder in you know, than in the cartoon, right? Like,
as much as I absolutely love the character, I can't stop seeing fat Elon Musk with blue face.
Thank you. I also see him as that. It's something about the black hair. I'm just like,
but the voice is just. I'm so glad they cast him because it's absolutely spot. I mean, obviously it's spot on. It's the same voice actor. It's the voice actor from the show. It was
the perfect transition. I feel like I'm hoping that non-fans that haven't seen that you know, but I felt like the fact that he's done the voice and he's done that character, he knows that character even deeper and maybe more complex than just another actor that would come in and try to portray it in their own way. You know, it's just like it really jumped off the page to me.
Dude, in his Star Destroyer.
Oh
that
my
was
gosh.
So cool.
Like the patches,
everything, the damage from the End of Rebels is still there. It's everything is.
It was so cool, and like they kind of essentially turned it into like almost like a Zeppelin. How he kind of like falls, you know, he parks it on top of that little altar.
That was so. That was not only do we get the altar scene where we're meeting the Night Sisters, we come out, we see them floating these orbs that go around Sabine. We see all of this cool stuff, and then his entrance and seeing that, you know, we've always been like, oh, okay, like that's a cool little part where ships park, but to see it float down like that, and then
it was awesome.
They did a really good. I loved every minute of that. So, especially as someone who's read Heir to the Empire, grown up, you know, with Thrawn, seeing him come to life, the way they did the skin and the eyes.
Yeah. Everything, even gave me Ezra his blue eyes, which was great.
Yeah.
But the one
you were concerned about that.
I was. But
I remember you talking about it way back when.
Way back when. Yeah. But like even going back to the books, you know, even the loose thread, you know, is implied in this as well, in the fact that it's no longer Rook, it's Sabine, and so you wonder what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a great moment between the two of them as well, and you know, Sabine has really the actress that plays her has really grown on me. Like
I thought I never had any doubt with her. I felt she was always Sabine.
She really she holds the room.
I think she's great.
Yeah. And her fight scene, oh my gosh, like
that's probably
only till the very end where she pulls out the lightsaber, and I loved every minute of that. We get to see her use you don't like it,
Beskar.
No,
you got to use her Beskar. She shoots out that thing that wraps around the guy and shocks him. Like,
it's one of my favorite things was her deflecting a laser bolt back into a guy's face. It was one of the best things ever.
I think it was awesome.
Yeah.
I thought her fight scenes were very cool. Like, so that's one thing that we've gotten in this series that I think we've gotten so much of, and I'm ready for more. Is fight choreography. Like, you think about like the amount of fight scenes we've gotten, at least 2 fight scenes in every episode, right?
Yeah.
And it's just been really solid. I mean,
and they
the
fit
difference
into the story.
And the difference between that and like the Mandalorian, or even whatever, like the Book of Boba Fett, maybe not even an Obi-Wan, actually. Like, we didn't really get a lot of that choreography and like all like the dance of the lightsaber duels, right? Or even the shootouts, and we've gotten tons of it in this series, and they've done a really good job. And I was actually thinking about that earlier when Nick, you were mentioning kind of like the different fighting stances and stuff. Like, I'm not attuned enough to that to like, hey, that's the stance that Obi-Wan used in whatever episode, right? I mean, I think that all kind of came to light with his fight against Darth Maul in in Clone Wars. Wait, Clone Wars, right? Rebels. Sorry. Like, I think I got to kind of appreciate a little bit more of that scene because of the different fighting scenes. I'm kind of going back and forth, and I never really thought of it that much. But there's the story behind every fight, right? There's a story behind every choreography, and it was really cool to kind of see her on her own fighting and taking on like 4 or 5, like what were they? They were like the natives of that land.
Yeah, they were like scavengers or kind of raiders.
Scavengers. I thought it was really cool. And hey, you know what? We got introduced to this series is Porg. We got introduced to this series is like
the turtle
Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda, and that's the fucking turtles, dude. I loved them. I was like, when we first met that first turtle, I'm like, that's the Frodo Baggins of Star Wars. Like,
he even had the outfit on.
He did. I was like, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. This is gonna be cheesy. And I was like, I kind of love him. I kind of love him.
It had very much Ewok vibes, in Return of the Jedi. Actually, what I thought of them as pikeys, like from Snatch, because you couldn't understand what they're saying. They're saying, like, what are they saying? It's just pikey. And then when they see their village and they're all like kind of like in a circle, like caravans. It's like, this is what it reminded me of.
But it also works
with.
This
is gonna be real cheesy, but it worked.
But it also works with who Ezra is and who he would probably end up being with because of his ability to communicate with animals.
Right? And like, it also gave me a Frozen vibe for anyone who's seen Frozen with their kids or on their own. The little the rock trolls, right?
Yeah.
It really, to me, like a lot of Star Wars, they reference Westerns. And this one, this particularly, when she defeats them and then she's searching, which is it. That's what it is. It's the Searchers with John Wayne. Is that when she finds Ezra, it's the same as with this. The Searchers Western is about a young girl who got kidnapped by Native Americans and has lived amongst them for years. And so naturally, John Wayne and this guy have been searching for years for this girl. And it's the same thing. And that, like, once they find her, she's, been accepted within the Native American population and same thing. So to me, that was kind of like an homage to Searchers. It's the same as with Mandalorian, though, especially season 1. It was just one Western after the other. Right. Just like, this episode's this Western.
Samurai Western.
Yeah.
Before I forget, Chris, I was thinking about the Night Sisters, and we do this other podcast called the RCAD, and we happen to be thinking about disco songs, but I had the song Night Fever.
Night Sister.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was interesting to me as well, like the whole Night Sisters thing, and that it's once again there's a lot of mythology, very subtle, and some of it's over the right hitting you on the head with it, in that you have the mother, the crone, and the other one, but yet they're in threes, and then always it's a triangle, like Sabine's
right.
the window for her cell is a triangle, like Sith, 1 point, 1 leader. Then of course what happens when they find her and they immediately recognize her as kind of a Jedi, it's like they imprison her in a triangle, like everything is done that way. And then you look at because the Night Sisters aren't Sith, they're dark side users,
right?
But their power comes from somewhere else, which is always really intriguing to me because we don't know much about it yet. And you assume witches, they're pagans, they come from nature, they come from the natural thing, and so everything that they've left behind, where they originally had the map and the sphere, and it all comes from the earth. Like even in the games, I figured Chris would chime in here with the Jedi Survivor or whatever it was called. What's the game that you liked, Chris?
Which one?
The one.
Shoot.
Give me a second.
But anyway, there's a lot when you see the Night Sisters, even in that video game, you have the orbs, you have all these things puzzles you have to figure out. And then you even see when the map is cut in two, it's full of gears. And you kind of start thinking, are these the Zypho, which is this ancient
Jedi Survivor?
And did the Zypho who were wiped out, did they evolve into the Night Sisters in the Star Wars galaxy, not the new galaxy we've been introduced to? There's just a lot of stuff that you can really overthink.
Well, it is cool that we see this temple on Peridia, I think is what it was called. We see the temple there, but where they left, we see an exact duplicate of that temple, but it's in ruins. Now we can kind of see how they connect and how they relate to each other.
It's very Stonehenge, that's what I'm saying. Like as in pagan, it's very like of the celestial bodies, in the universe.
Yeah. Okay, so we mentioned Enoch. What do you think his story is? I mean, he's got that gold face, which
going off the biblical tale, I assume he has died so many times that he basically believes him to be immortal at this point, because that's what Enoch did. Enoch in the Bible or the Old Testament never died. God just took him, so I assume that's kind of what it's like. And then, and the same as with the ones with the red bands on them, like they've died and the Night Sisters have put them back to life. The same as we saw with the Inquisitor, if any of them get hit, they're just going to go,
right.
Fart dust.
We could see, I mean, if they come back to the galaxy, we could see Marok again,
right?
Essentially, theoretically, not that we're trying, like we need him, but Enoch, cool stormtrooper with the human face, all out of gold.
But even Balin and Shin are gods too. Like they're from Norse mythology. They were two wolves in Norse mythology that chased the sun and the moon until Ragnarok. And so there's always mythology somewhere in Star Wars if you know what you're looking for. And you see that when they ride their wolves, like Balin has a dark wolf, she has a light wolf, and it's always stuff that you can get into.
We didn't talk too much about those wolves, but the rat dog, horse like creature. Was a fun scene as well. Seeing that interaction with Sabine, and how it acted like a dog, and just kind of how the level of detail that they put into that creature. It wasn't just like I mean they made it. It was very convincing.
Legitimate, yeah. It was good.
The Balin mentions Boken Jedi, the Jedi that basically are raised kind of in the wild, which was kind of a cool new term in the Jedi lexicon now.
I kind of felt this was a way of showing a little bit of arrogance by Balin, and that it's kind of like saying, "Oh, he was just a rube or a hillbilly Jedi. He's not really a Jedi because he was trained with wooden sticks. He wasn't really trained." I think that could be, kind of like the Emperor, when Luke says, your overconfidence is your weakness. And I think that can kind of come back around, probably to bite Balin.
But it's interesting though that
He's such a weak character.
He rejects certain Jedi things, but then she also has the Jedi braid.
He has an affinity for him too.
So yeah, exactly. So he's definitely walking that gray, quote unquote, or maybe that's why we have this more orangey lightsaber from them. Perhaps they're not, true Sith in that way, and the fact that they've, I don't know. Let's see, what else did I have here in my notes? Night Sisters. Yep.
I'll tell you one thing that drove me just slightly nuts was when Sabine finally sees Ezra.
Yeah.
And she doesn't tell him that we defeated the Emperor and the Empire. Like, no, we'll talk about that later. Like, no, you will tell me now. You don't have any idea how long I've been waiting.
She said like we won, or she said something of the sort of like, it worked.
He just said it worked, didn't it?
It worked, yeah.
Didn't it? And then she's like, I'll get to that.
Well, she was brushing him off because she didn't want to say what she did to get there.
Yeah, I get it.
So that's why she was just kind of like any person that's like done something wrong, right? It's like, I don't really want to talk about that right now. Let's just talk about the good things. So
right.
It would have been. I was surprised that episode went as long as it did. I was wanting more, so when it stopped, I was just like, "No, come on!" Like I really wish these episodes were just a full hour. Just like.
Oh yeah, me too.
But
they could have cut the end of that episode, and it would been like when she sees Ezra and she moves towards him, and they could have cut it right there. But
yeah,
I think they intentionally left that like.
Well, and we had
relationship build.
And we had that scene too where the creatures are looking at them, and it was kind of funny because they'd set this up earlier in episode 1 where it's like he says like, well, I always kind of thought of you like a sister. I'm like, check the tapes, dude. You had a crush on her in like seasons 1 and 2, like hardcore. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're gonna do it.
And then so they kind of had more of an ooh moment with the creatures there. We also had that moment where Thrawn is basically like, I want to know everything about Ahsoka's master, which I thought was interesting because we know Thrawn has a history with Anakin. We know that he's a master manipulator. So,
but does he know that they were Anakin and Ahsoka were a pair? Does he know that?
I assume that he's going to try to find. I mean, he asks about that. He's like, I want to find out who her master was. So. Mm-hmm. I just kind of assumed that like he's going to, like I don't know why they would have that information on hand or where, but it definitely sets up for if he is kind of already second guessing or thinking,
because he's one of a few people in the galaxy, if you will, that knows Anakin's story.
Yeah,
and such a great foe. I can only imagine that the Filoni movie is dealing with the threat of Thrawn. Like he seems like. I realize that maybe people want a bigger threat than Thrawn, but come on, he's kind of like this galaxy's Thanos.
Thrawn's a bridge to the means of what we're gonna get.
Yeah,
I don't think he's not gonna be the keynote, right? He's gonna be the.
I
story between the story.
I don't know how much Filoni will allow or how much they're going to get into the origins or get into the sequel trilogy. But I have a feeling because you see it already when they do reference Senator Organa.
Yeah.
She has a history of even going against the New Republic. Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that with the Thrawn movie, that will be like the moment where she begins the resistance. Because the New Republic is so impotent to see a threat when it's clearly in their face.
Right. Yeah, that would be. I wonder how they're going to deal with that because she's, we're supposedly never going to get any more Carrie Fisher. So unless they're going to use her voice or a hologram on something, like I just don't, So
yeah, and this apparently was the first use of James Earl Jones's AI voice.
Oh, okay.
Because they did purchase the rights to his voice for future Star Wars, which I didn't. I just learned that actually not too long ago.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, Darth Vader will live on forever that way. Um, what else you got in your notes there, Nick?
I
know
know
we got a
because
couple more.
we've skipped all over, so that's
We
there's
have
so many
skipped
things.
over a lot of different. I mean, we saw Maldalorians in episode
Mm.
5. I didn't mention that. That was a cool thing. We saw the battle of Mandalore with Ahsoka. Again, young Ahsoka doing a cool double slash move with her lightsabers. Also, if you follow Ahsoka's lightsabers, it was a really cool transition to see her use the green lightsaber, one singular, and then to see how she advances and she's using the pair Anakin gives her when she returns, and the double blue. So, yeah, I'm thoughts about moving forward. Where do you see, like, what do you think might happen in the next couple? Because we basically have 2 more episodes to go.
Yeah, I assume it's going to end on a cliffhanger.
We all guess.
Yeah, because there's not much you could do. I assume that they'll stop them at some point. Where they're not going to jump back to the Star Wars universe in this season, anyhow. But yeah, I could be wrong.
I assumed I guess I don't know why, but I just always assumed that the jump back would be the cliffhangers, that Thrawn would be on his way.
Could be. I mean, because we know Ahsoka is coming, and he knows nothing about Ahsoka, Thrawn. I mean,
right.
So that's going to be a big threat, and
it's sad to learn that all of the whales go there to die.
Yeah.
So it's
it's crap. Talk about that. Like,
yeah,
they were like flying through like fossils of dead whales. Not to mention the fact that he gave the standing order to destroy them as soon as they come into orbit.
Yeah, pretty brutal.
Which I wonder if that's not the first time he's done that.
That's a good theory. I love the bones floating in space. I made some artwork like maybe about a year ago of like bone carcasses in space. So when I was seeing it, I was like, I was both creatively jealous and also like just loved it. So it was,
I mean, with the Purrgil, right? I mean, we've only seen Purrgil in the Clone Wars. I'm sorry, Rebels rather. In this show, in like a presence in which they're just kind of like godly, right? We don't see a mortality for them. And I think we saw the first of that in this episode, right? Where we saw like, okay, they're not this godlike creature. They're just
creatures. Yeah.
It was cool, the hyperspace. Sorry, Nick.
No worries.
But that hyperspace that we saw with the Purrgil was different than the usual hyperspace that we see with other vehicles, which was cool. Cool introduction. The fact that there's a whole other.
Well, I think it's because they're going way faster than
right.
Yeah,
but I mean,
technology.
I mean,
the thought that struck me, I don't know, a few days after episode 5 or maybe it was 6, but was, this is happening at the exact same time that season 3 of Mandalorian is happening. And so when we saw the Purrgil in season 3 of Mandalorian with Grogu looking through his little thing and seeing the Purrgil to the left, that could have been the exact same moment that they're going, and he is sensing Ahsoka there.
Right.
And so it's just little thoughts. You're like, oh, that makes sense.
That's cool.
All right, I know we're trying to keep this to an hour. So any other last thoughts though, Chris or Nick, about where you think this show might head with any other
I don't know. I mean,
characters
I think
or things that might be introduced?
We're being introduced to a whole new mythology within Star Wars that no one has seen or heard, right? Which I think is actually really kind of cool.
Fresh.
And it's being done by Dave Filoni, and I'm all for it. So I think we're going to be introduced to something that no one's expecting. I think we're going to be introduced to something that's probably going to be the extension of the Star Wars universe for years to come. And I'm all for it, man. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see more fat blue Elon Musk.
He's definitely been eating well.
Dude, they did his eyes right. I don't know if you saw that or not. There was like a one scene where you really saw his eyes. Yes. His eyes were glowing, and I thought that was really badass. I want to see more Thrawn. He seems to put on some pounds because he used to be a little bit more slim back in the day.
Well, he's living off the land there.
Well, I even like little things like
he's probably eating space whale.
Yeah. Oh yeah, blubber. Yeah. I love attention to detail, and so it's things like that. Like even Thrawn, who is very meticulous and very professional. You see his uniform has little bitty tatters on it because he's clearly been away, for a long time.
It also makes you wonder.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're on the same page as I am.
There's this
makes you wonder,
spot.
Is he whole?
Oh, is he whole? No, I was thinking like, was this from even a battle with Ezra? Because
true.
Because clearly, like, why has he given up hope on Ezra? Like, why even find Ezra? Like, he clearly sees it as a pawn that it doesn't. Maybe he was obsessed with finding Ezra for a while. Maybe they lost too many men. Maybe he had him. I love the fact that there is a history here with Ezra, Thrawn being on this planet, that maybe that can be explored in a book or a comic or something, or even a flashback.
I didn't think about the uniform thing until you just mentioned that, Nick, and that's significant because he is like Captain Dry Cleaning.
Yeah,
he actually redesigned. He actually redesigned his uniform against the what was it? The Empire, like the Empire's code.
Right.
Like that was actually in one of the books. I forgot which book it was in, but he actually had the tailor alter his Grand Admiral uniform, which completely went against everything that's ever been expected by the Empire. And because he's super particular. And the fact that he was wearing like a tattered uniform, I think is intentional. And I think we're probably going to see a little bit more reason behind that.
Oh yeah, little Easter eggs that I had written down. I had more, and I've spoken about some of them. Little things that I just like to notice. And I usually can't stand it if you do a quote verbatim.
We lost Chris.
Whoops.
We had a Jack moment. Yeah,
he's in the world between worlds.
I'm okay. I'm all right.
Literally, his screen's just black.
At the end of episode 5, when the droid,
Hu Young,
when Hu Young says, I think I'll get closer to one of the big ones, and then what is Ahsoka's line? Yeah, that'll do. Which is the same as the asteroid with, I'll get closer to one of the big ones. That'll work nicely. Like things like that. There's a picture of Kanan on the dashboard of the Ghost. The tricorder that Hera was using is the same one that Han was using and Han Hoth on Empire Strikes Back. There's a lot of little stuff I wrote down. One of the things I didn't mention was that, going back to Ahsoka, I think her embracing herself was much like how Yoda never told Luke that you have to defeat Vader. He just said you have to confront Vader. And so he made himself vulnerable the same way that Sidious made himself vulnerable to switch Anakin. And I kind of felt Ahsoka was the same thing. Like this one is that she had to stop trying to control things and just surrender to the will of the Force, which that showed a lot with her trusting the whale, of just like reaching out and like going into the belly of Jonah and the whale in a way. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of mythology. There's a lot of storytelling if you really want to read into it in these 2 episodes. Like Chris said, it's there's a whole world that can be built on these 2 episodes, which I appreciated. But me being a plot person, it's like, I want to get going.
Well, I mean, you have to introduce these characters.
You do.
So the character of Thrawn yes, he has to have his entrance. But we also have to see how he's a tactician and how he's manipulating people, what he really cares about. I mean, he wants Balin to die as well. So like he sees him as a usable commodity, basically, which I think is important. It's important to understand and Balin basically thinks of Thrawn as basically, up to this point, we thought Thrawn was the end goal for Balin, but no. There's something larger there. And I like that. I like that there's layers that are kind of unfolding. So in a way, having those moments does move things forward, because we're like, oh, okay, there is more to this character or their intentions. So
another thing I had written down, And
last
this is
thing.
last thing. Sorry, the last thing I had written down was going back to Lord of the Rings references. Whereas when we had Ahsoka the White in episode 5, in episode 6, in the very kind of beginning when you get to the new planet, it's a lot like Middle Earth. The Night Sisters castle looks like Minas Tirith. The statues that you see look like the kings of old. With the hands out, and then Balin and Shin, when they ride out on their wolves, are just like the ring race. Like it's the same kind of scene. It's
cool.
a lot of
totally. I was
some...
trying to place that statue thing. It was reminding me of something, and I couldn't quite place it. But that's exactly what it is. It's the statues.
The ones with the mouths open kind of reminded me of H.R. Geiger, like that artwork, and some of that. And also the ship that comes down, that comes off of the hyperspace ring. That spaceship, it looks very Dune. Yeah, the gold ship. It looks very Dune-esque.
It's Dune-esque. And then even I had that written down too.
Yeah, I love the design of that ship, but
like Balin was dead on. Like when he's talking about how I think I'm not sure when, but the Night Sisters basically say that they rode the whales to the Star Wars universe back in the past, very much like in Dune, how they rode the sandworms. I'm like, okay. So there's a lot of
I love it.
Things that are blended.
On that note, I know we could continue to talk, but keeping this at an hour, we'd like to hear from you, the listeners. We know that you listen. Send us an email. We've got a great email. We've got a great guy that writes and creates titles for things. His name's Chris. The Force is well done at gmail.com. Send us your emails, thoughts. What did you think about these episodes? Tell us why Nick's wrong. And
so
never wrong.
What was it?
I was going to say, send us an email because we got 2 episodes left in the season.
Yeah. I'm
thinking that if you want to have a recap of next week and the finale, or should we do just one more episode in 2 weeks? I wonder what the listeners would like to hear.
Yeah, let us know. Your vote and voice can help. Become a patron. Help us out. Help the show out by going to jandjack.com. Some patrons that make this show possible. There's a bunch, but there are 4 that we mention at the end of this show. I've got some names for them. I know Chris is going to make fun of these, but
I will.
They are based on this Clone War memory Maggie. Okay, because it's a Clone War memory. See.
Okay.
Clone War memory Maggie. Yeah. Okay. I know I use this one a lot for Joanne, but come on. Shadow Warrior Joanna King.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the title, yeah. Shadow Warrior.
Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Nice. Nicely done.
Okay, one out of 3 so far.
Yeah.
And Captain Enoch Eckhart. Just the easy.
2 out of 3 in depth.
Okay. Kind of like how Nick rated these episodes.
Hey, I didn't hate them. I just,
I think this is the least critical Nick's been of all the episodes.
These have been some. The thing about Ahsoka, it's been a stair step for me.
Yeah.
First episode, second episode, third episode, fourth episode, and I just keep going up with my love and adoration.
It's like I said, I didn't hate them. Just to defend myself a little bit, but it's just one of those things where, like, when episode 5 dropped and all like the diehard fanboys were just like, "Oh my god, it's so good!" I just kind of was like, "Sell me why it's so good." Like, I mean, I get why it's good, but I didn't love it. I wasn't on the couch going.
Because here's the thing. Here's the difference, Nick. We are happily living amongst Generation X, right? Now, if you think about, like, who is the biggest audience for the Clone Wars and for Rebels? It's not us.
It's not us, yeah.
Right? It's an entire generation of millennials and Gen Zers who have been introduced to Star Wars via Clone Wars and or Rebels as kids growing up, right? So you have it's an entire new generation of Star Wars fans that did not come from the same place that we all did, and that was like the nerd climax that they were looking for. Like it lived. It's what it is, man. Like because I mean, we got excited for it, but that's what they were born and bred on for Star Wars. So to have that return for them is I think that's why we're seeing so many of like these reaction videos of people crying and like going crazy and be like, "Oh my God, it's Rex!" Like I think we all really enjoy the hell out of it, but there's people who that's what they know. Right, and that's what they.
I honestly didn't think we were going to get anything World Between Worlds to the very end of this series. So the fact that it went there, it introduced us to the concept. I do think that it can play out with what Balin has in mind. It makes sense logically as like a plot structure too. Like what power could he be in search of? What power have we seen at the old temple that is probably at this temple here in this other galaxy? And that's so. A portal or a gate which could bring him the ultimate power, the power to change history.
It just occurred to me because I've been saying Ezra could be the son, but Balin could be the son,
right?
That makes more sense in a way, and the fact that it's Ahsoka versus Balin, the son and daughter versus each other,
right,
with Anakin in the middle, that makes more sense. So.
Well, I guess we'll see.
We'll find out,
and we'll be back in about a week or 2 weeks, depending on what our schedules. Yeah. So, anyway, thanks for joining us. This show was 1 in a million. Thanks for everybody that made this show possible, and thank you to my co-hosts, for not crapping on Kanan.
Oh, nice.